Unspoken issues.
Well, okay, so Chris Armstrong, you want to talk about the last issue of Firearm. I started wondering, like, number one, I'm glad I could count on you. But number two, I'm thinking, like, oh, man, I don't know if he knows what he's getting into here, because this is the very final issue of Firearm. As far as Firearm goes, did you read through the whole thing? Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, I've said before, I was on Ultraverse from the ground floor. I was getting pretty much all those titles early on. And then, I had that period where I kind of was out of comics for a couple years. When I came back, it was on its last legs at Marvel. They were just playing out the tape with the last few titles at Marvel at that time. I didn't read all of Firearm back in the day. I read the first few issues probably. In the last 12, 13 years or so, I've gone through and gotten really back into all that Ultraverse stuff, and I've got a complete collection now of all the standard issues where I can read the full Ultraverse story, and I've been doing it for the last maybe 2 years or so, just, a little at a time. I've got a list of all the issues in chronological order, or order of release anyway. So I have gone through and read all the Firearm stuff. I think I probably read the Rafferty Saga a little over a year ago, so it's a little hazy, but I have read it.
At this time, Ultraverse is kind of, I want to say winding down, but we are on the precipice of what we thought would be something great, which is the Marvel Universe bringing in the Ultraverse. I just wanted to see, is this going to be any good? I've never heard of it. It may not be good. It may be good, but either way, I'll go ahead and cover it. So for the past week, I've been reading the issues with the blood spatter.
Yeah. Don't leave that out.
No, you cannot leave that. That's right. So the issues with the blood spatter, except, strangely enough, Prime number 20 does not have the blood spatter. Of all these issues, every single one of them does, but Prime number 20 does not. It has a little thing on there that says, I just read this, probably about an hour ago, but it has a little thing on there that has Rafferty's face. That says, oh, Rafferty's in this issue. But it does not have the blood spatter, which is pretty interesting.
Well, also no blood spatter on Firearm number 18.
Oh, let's look at that one more time. You're right. Well, anyway, Rafferty, his name is at least on these issues. That's for sure. His name is definitely on these issues. So over the past week, I have familiarized myself with the Rafferty Saga. He is this villain who has no powers. He is just a guy who has it out for ultras. And he starts taking some ultras out. But not only that, he is giving Alex Swan the business. I start to realize there's some mention about how James Robinson is a fan of John Woo. Mm-hmm. Would you have any comment on that? Would you say that that's pretty apt?
Yeah, Robinson, who I really have only passingly familiar with. I mean, he's kind of a big deal. I think Starman is his biggest thing.
Yeah,
I think he did that with Tony Harris, but I've never read that. The only thing of his I've read outside of Firearm is JSA: The Golden Age. I believe he wrote that.
You're right.
And then he did a Justice League run in like the mid 2000s. A lot of it was with Mark Bagley, which is the only saving grace because it's not a very good run. So I don't have a whole lot of experience. A lot of the early issues of Firearm, in the letters page, he would write up stuff and talk directly to the reader. And he would talk about books that he liked. This is clearly a character that was heavily influenced by noir detectives. He likes those kind of books. He would ask readers to recommend movies and books in the letters pages and stuff. So he had a really cool letters page where he interacted with people that way. He would talk about other stuff besides just comics in it. He was a big film guy and a big, at least, hardboiled detective, type books. He was really into those.
Well, tell me about John Woo. I mean, I know I've heard the name. I know some of his films, but if you were to describe to somebody, okay, this is a John Woo film, what are the staples of a John Woo film?
A lot of slow motion, a lot of gunfights, gunplay, a lot of over-the-top action.
Okay.
The ones that really broke through, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, he had a couple movies with Chow Yun-fat, Hard Boiled and The Killer. Those are the two most famous ones. And then he got his shot in America as well. His first American film was Hard Target, the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. And then probably his biggest American hit was Mission Impossible 2.
Oh, okay.
And then he did some other stuff in the States, and he's done a lot of stuff back in Hong Kong as well since then. But yeah, he's a pretty big deal, especially for that era of the 90s. I haven't seen all of his movies. I like a lot of the ones I've seen. He's definitely known for being a stylish action movie guy. And a lot of doves in John Woo movies. A lot of doves flying around.
And I think it's about Firearm 15, maybe 16. I think it's 15, though. We get introduced to one of the other main characters showing up here in this 18th issue of Firearm. The conclusion of the Rafferty Saga and of Firearm itself is, oh my goodness, Penny the baby. I can't remember the name. I had it written down here.
I cannot remember.
I know the first name's definitely Penny. I cannot remember the last name. We get introduced to this baby in the middle of this event. Every issue has about 2 pages dedicated to this baby girl who is supposedly the second coming of Christ, who has these healing powers.
Penny Slater.
I remember seeing this baby introduced. I was like, is Rafferty going to try and kill a baby? At one point, he kills a kid who's just told his dad he turned into an Ultra. The kid's flying up around in the sky as a teenager. So I know Rafferty's like not scared of killing kids, but I was like, is this going to be, So at first I was like, oh no, this will be some other storyline. No, it's not, because we're ending on Firearm 18, and sure enough, this baby is the target. Where we ended Firearm 17, Rafferty had made his way into the Crystal Cathedral. He is the baby, and his strike team is in there, and he's working for a guy by the name of Mosley, who is an Ultra. So Rafferty's actually working for an Ultra, but Mosley is like, yeah, why don't you go out and kill some Ultras for me, because the less Ultras that are out there, the less I have to worry about. You like to kill the Ultras, go for it. But Mosley has put him on target to kill this baby because of the powers it has. That's where we're at. Rafferty's in the cathedral. Firearm just got married and is heading to go see Rafferty just after him and Ellen got to spend their honeymoon night together. He sees stuff going on the TV, and he's headed out to go to Crystal Cathedral.
Married to an Ultra, even.
So now, clearly, he makes a big deal about that. So I assume it is a big deal for him.
But yeah, Firearm doesn't like Ultras, if I remember right. He's basically a PI who is constantly getting caught up in Ultra fiascos and dealing with them, even though he's just a regular guy. He's a former secret agent, I think, British secret agent, and he's constantly getting wrapped up in Ultra business, but he doesn't particularly care for superheroes and stuff like that.
And throughout this whole saga, Rafferty's got the best of Alec every single time. It seems like he's not killed him or anything. It's almost like he's toying with him.
Right.
It's time to get into the 18th issue, the final issue of Firearm, the final confrontation. Our creative team here, James Robinson writing, penciled by Arnie Jorgensen, Keith Conroy as well, inked by Michael Christian and Lawrence Welch, lettered by Patrick Owsley, and colored by Robert Alvord. Most of the time they have some kind of weird coloring company on the interiors here. Dude, these coloring companies that Malibu has, this one is Gone Fishing with Charlene and Ruth interior colors. The other one was called Food Hammer.
Uh-huh.
All right. You ready? I'm going to get into the synopsis unless you got anything else you want to say.
No, I'm ready.
Sit back and relax. A storm of violence explodes as the final showdown begins. Rafferty, a cold and calculating killer, crashes dramatically through glass with guns blazing, determined to end things once and for all. The man in his sights, Alex Swan, codenamed Firearm, a private investigator who's been on Rafferty's bloody trail for far too long. This is no ordinary mission. This is the final kill. Outside, news anchors recap the chaos for a tense public. The Reverend August's Crystal Cathedral has become a war zone. Rafferty had seized control of it, murdering the Reverend and holding a child, believed to be a miracle baby, hostage. Traps laced with explosive devices to Ultra Energy have kept superheroes at bay, but now Firearm is inside, alone. The sanctuary becomes a battlefield. Explosions thunder through the cathedral as Firearm bursts in, narrowly dodging death at every turn. The two adversaries, Rafferty and Swan, exchange brutal gunfire in a ballet of violence lit by muzzle flashes and candlelight. This isn't just a firefight. It's a test of resolve, instinct, and grit. Swan knows this could be his last stand, and he's determined to go out fighting. Rafferty continues his relentless assault, but Swan presses forward, dodging gunfire and shattering statues. He reflects on the unfinished business of his life, even as he fights to stay alive. The fight spills into higher grounds. Swan races upward while armed soldiers chase after him. He reminisces about lives he owes, friends he's lost, debts unpaid. As gunmen climb to pursue Swan, taunts them from above, inviting them into his trap. This cathedral has become a crucible, and only one man will walk away. Amid shattered stone and gunfire, Swan fights with fierce resolve. He dives from above, unloading twin pistols as he crashes into a squad of armed mercenaries. Quips tumble from his lips as fast as the bullets from his guns, but beneath the bravado his mind races, flashing with unfinished dreams and regrets. He always wanted to learn French, maybe play the piano. He'll settle for staying alive. Gunshots echo as Swan carves a bloody path forward. He's not just fighting to survive, he's buying time. Each step forward is a gamble, each enemy fallen, a move in a brutal chess game. He reflects on the quiet parts of his life most never see. Microwave spaghetti, messy apartments, days lost in sleep. He owns his flaws even as he presses on through carnage and pain. Outside the cathedral, tension mounts as reporters speak to Penny Slater's mother, frantic and desperate. Meanwhile, allies wait with bated breath as Swan has now been out of contact for 20 minutes. Inside, he interrogates one of Rafferty's men, extracting information about the hostage location. It's a slim hope, but it's something. Swan acts fast, freeing hostages scattered throughout the cathedral. He coordinates their escape and holds back the police who are ready to storm the building. One wrong move and the entire place, rigged with explosives, could go up. Outside, superhero reinforcements arrive. Prime, Hardcase, and others prepare to move in. At last, Swan reaches the baby, but it's not a simple rescue. The infant is booby-trapped with bombs. Swan must tread carefully, coercing one of Rafferty's strike team. Let's say coercing. Let's put that in quotes. They navigate the final steps of this deadly dance. As Swan holds the baby in one arm, he fires with the other, protecting the innocent with everything he's got. The cost has been high, but Swan's not done yet. Alex Swan moves through the cathedral, baby in arms, whispering reassurances to the child, but the flickering shadows warn of something darker ahead. Out steps Rafferty, weapon ready, voice calm and tone cold. The two adversaries lock eyes in the sacred heart of the cathedral. Amid looming statues and golden light, the stage is set for their final confrontation. As we can see here, this is Rafferty's coined phrase, hello, hi, howdy. He always starts a conversation like that. Rafferty taunts Swan, casting doubts over his allies. He paints a grim picture that perhaps Swan's been abandoned, betrayed, left to die alone. Swan, ever defiant, counters with an offer. Let him place the baby outside, then they'll settle it like men. But Rafferty mocks the idea of honor. Whatever Swan thought of him, Rafferty was never a gentleman, and he makes that heartbreakingly clear. The fight explodes in a blur of violence and inner turmoil. Swan lunges, Rafferty strikes. Thoughts of love, loss, regrets, and small joys, coffee, music, and morning rituals flash through Swan's mind. He fights not just for survival, but for all of the beauty in life he's barely allowed himself to enjoy. Swan lands a critical shot, a third hidden gun, catching Rafferty off guard. Blood spills, Rafferty falls, but he's not done. He gurgles out a smile, revealing the dead man's trump card. His finger hovers over a detonator. Then, boom! A colossal explosion rips through the cathedral. Swan is flung like a ragdoll, shielding the baby. Fire devours everything. Inferno surrounds them. Fire crackles, smoke swirls, and Swan rises from the debris, miraculously alive. The baby safe in his arms. He stumbles through the blaze, his face is scorched, his clothes torn, but hope still burns in his eyes. I guess we're both born under lucky stars, he mutters to the child, but Rafferty isn't done yet. Enraged, he emerges from the flames one last time, knife in hand, lunging, throwing the knife at Swan and the child. The final attack is desperate, unhinged. Swan reacts instinctively. He turns his body, takes the knife in the back of his shoulder, and with fire licking at his heels and death inches from his face, he raises his weapon and fires. Swan then stumbles from the burning wreckage, baby still in his arms. Flames roar behind him as smoke billows into the sky. His body is broken, scorched, barely hanging on. A statue of Christ watches silently. Swan collapses on the cathedral steps, exhausted, triumphant, and barely conscious, and Rafferty is hopefully dead. The crowd rushes forward. Medics and heroes gather. Penny's mother breaks from the crowd, tears in her eyes, screaming for her child. The baby, miraculously unharmed, reaches for Swan as he whispers faint words, torn between life and death, grateful she's safe. He's fading. Swan's mind spirals. He sees Penny's face and smiles. At least I saved you, and the baby gazes at him, sensing the weight of what he's done. With his final reserves, he tries to say more, but collapses. Superheroes, medics, and news crews rush in as the scene turns chaotic. Baby reaches out and touches Alex's face. A blinding beam of light strikes down from the sky as the baby clings to Swan, her protector. Then silence. Swan lies still. People cry out that he's dead. Others lean in close, hoping. One voice cuts through the panic. No, I got a pulse. A wave of relief spreads. Penny is reunited with her mother, who embraces her daughter with overwhelming joy. Around them, the heroes stand guard. Reporters capture the moment, knowing history was just made. And above them all, through the ruins of the cathedral, a single voice speaks the truth. Swan's alive. And that's it. There it is.
Fade to black.
There you go. The end. The Rafferty Saga has finished. Firearm has finished. Chris Armstrong, you have the floor here, sir. What are your thoughts?
First of all, starting with the cover, really stretching the term guest starring to its limits.
No kidding.
Guest starring Prime and Hardcase, who basically do nothing because they're unable to get into the building to help.
Dude, it was so funny because just to bring up a continuity thing here real quick.
Sure.
In our previous issue, let me flip this back to here. January 1995, Firearm number 17 and Prime number 20. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, Prime takes an arrow to the head.
Oh, yeah.
In Firearm number 17.
Explosive arrow.
An explosive arrow. And then Prime number 20, you get to see everything that leads up to Prime number 20. But I think at the end of Firearm 17, Alec has showed up at the cathedral and he's getting ready to go in. I read Firearm 17 before Prime number 20. He's getting ready to go in and the cops stop him. They're like, no, you aren't going in there, man. There's no way. You can't go in. He grabs a cop. He takes a cop hostage. So the cops have got their guns on Alec. And then Prime shows up. You're like, wait a second. He just died. They should have had that before that, I think. Actually, I think it's back
messy.
In here.
I remember that as well.
Yeah. So Prime's been outside this whole Firearm issue 18. But yeah, you're right. I don't even remember seeing Hardcase. Like, Hardcase, does he even say anything?
He Hardcase, you may not recognize him because of the red arm, actually. Because of...
Wait. Did you just make a C-3PO joke?
Maybe. You may not recognize Hardcase because he's wearing a mask. Because in his own book, he had been burned really badly, and so he was wearing a mask for a little while. If you look on the first page, he's the guy standing between Prime and Mantra.
Oh.
In the video, and news footage.
Oh,
and then
dude.
At the end,
he's at the end.
He's the one that says, we've got a pulse or whatever.
And then I think there's a moment here, if I remember correctly, the news is back out there, and this dude shows up in the mask. It might have been the previous issue. But anyway, he shows up, and he's like, you guys, that's Alex Swan, and you better start referring to him as such. And I was like, who is this dude? I have no idea who this guy is. I was used to the Hardcase that I saw in the Ultraverse, not Ultraverse, but the Ultraforce.
Ultraforce, yeah. But yeah, not really guest starring, but yeah, that first 2-page spread is very Woo-esque with him.
Oh, yeah.
Double fisting the guns there, blowing the bad guys away, kind of doing a dive through the candles. The art is actually pretty solid. Cully Hamner was the original Firearm artist, and he was on there for a little while. After the first year and a half, a lot of Ultraverse titles. I just get somebody in here to draw this.
Yeah.
Like, there was not a lot of continuity in that as far as the artists. I mean, some titles I think did stay pretty consistent, but most of them were kind of rotating through a lot of different artists. But the art is pretty good in this. Firearm's one of the better Ultraverse characters, I think. Robinson does a good job with the book. It's a little wordy. It's like The Strangers, another book that is one of the more popular Ultraverse books, but like
dense.
They're super dense and wordy, and you've really got to invest a good 20 to 25 minutes into any issue. Speaking of the art, another big 2-page spread that's basically the actual Rafferty Firearm battle. That is very cool. It's a little
it's hard to read.
Follow. It almost seems like the panels where Rafferty's already been shot take place before the big shot to the gut he takes, but it is still a pretty cool layout of, and I can see, 6 out of 10 people probably read it the right way. So
right.
It's probably not as bad as maybe I'm making it out to be, but it's a cool design with a lot of cool panels and the big shot of Rafferty getting it in the gut at the end. I do like they set it up like this is going to be the final issue. He uses his body to shield the baby from this big explosion. He's looking like Ray at the end of The Burbs, stumbling out. They set it up like, is this it for Firearm? Is he going to die? Like, they're kind of making it look like that's what's going to happen. And then the miraculous baby uses her healing powers to bring him back. We do see Firearm. There's another Firearm book later called Codename Firearm.
Right.
It's based on different characters, but those issues have Alex Swan backup stories in them as well.
Oh, okay.
So he does come back a little bit, and Robinson comes back and writes some of those. But a good finale, a lot of cool action, especially once they get to the fight with Rafferty and Firearm.
At the end of issue 17, they're like, come back in 30 to watch Alec die. And I was like, oh, okay. They killed off Warstrike. Warstrike had one more issue after issue 6. At the end of that issue, they were like, he's dead. Just be aware, this guy's dead. And I was like, okay, well, they may not be pulling punches with Alec either, because he's Rafferty. As far as villains go, Rafferty's got a stupid name, but throughout this saga, he's kind of held his own as this merciless killer. He gave Warstrike all those problems by killing all those ultras. I think
it's impressive that he like Firearm, he doesn't have any superpowers,
right?
He's finding ways to kill all these ultras.
That was a complaint or a comment I saw on one of those things that was posted, the Rafferty Saga, and I think from the comic ads. One guy was like, how was he able to kill all these ultras? And I'm like, he has his ways. He's able to do it.
The element of surprise helps.
Yeah, a big knife, I guess. But yeah, I thought there were some real stakes here, because if we're going to kill off Warstrike, Alec might bite the dust. And
they had shown he had killed, known Ultraverse character. Like some of the random characters that he killed were basically just there to die, but he also killed one of the freaks. An established character. He nearly killed Prime. So he was a threat. I will say it does look like he is dead. He wasn't just healed, he was actually brought back to life by the child. So they weren't lying, he did die.
I didn't think the baby was old enough to where it could crawl and lean itself up. I thought this baby was just a baby, but it's able to crawl and kind of lean itself up.
It's an ultra.
Oh, well, good point. Fair point. Okay. As far as my notes go here, one of my favorite moments is where Alec is pissed because Rafferty's got the baby, and he shoots a crossbow bolt right into his shoulder, and he screams, "You whore son," which I've never heard before. But here's the thing. I learned a lot about James Robinson. I knew a little bit about Starman, and I think I may have read some stuff. I understand that's a really good story, but I learned that James Robinson is British.
Right.
Therefore, a lot of him is coming through here with Alec. Not only that, there's a lot of Cockney.
Yeah.
I mentioned in a previous podcast that there is this phrase that Alec uses called Adam and Eve it. would you Adam and Eve it? And I'm like, what the hell is this guy's problem? What is he saying? It turns out that's Cockney because it's rhyming slang for would you believe it? Would you Adam and Eve it? And he uses it a few times throughout this book. And I was like, way to do your research, James Robinson. And I go and look, I'm like, oh, British anyway.
Yeah, he's fun.
I think he didn't have to do any research for this at all. But anyway, you whore son, never seen it in a comic. I don't think I've ever heard it in my entire life. Right. It's in the vocabulary now. There is a point where Alec is making his way through the cathedral, and he's about to get jumped by a bunch of ninjas, or the strike team that Rafferty has. And he goes, one of you wears too much Brüt. That was probably me back in the 90s. I
remember Brüt. My dad had a bottle.
Yeah, big old green bottle of Brüt. Capers on my pizza. So are you a caper guy?
I don't know what that means. Is it mushrooms? Maybe capers?
The beautiful thing is I've got the internet here, and I will tell you that I'm not eating them either, but here we go.
Oh, yeah, get rid of those.
Don't put that on my pizza, whatever. Yeah. But apparently he's all right with capers. Capers are the unripened green buds of a prickly bush. I think they're really strong, too. Like, they're very strong. So, yeah. Negative. Don't put it on my pizza. Anyway, he talks about how that's one of the things that he's learned to appreciate is capers on his pizza. I don't think so. You British son of a gun. And yeah, I already mentioned about how last issue they said Swan would die, and he did. So they didn't lie. The one thing that I liked about this is the fact that there are a lot of classic villain tropes with Rafferty, where he's kind of like the monologuing villain a little bit every once in a while. But I think really he plays with Alec this whole time. He sends him a cell phone. He's like, okay, I want to call you and I want to tell you who I'm going to kill next. I'll see you there. That happens throughout this whole saga. He just plays and plays with Alec because he knows he can get him to do things. He actually, like I said, at one point he got Alec to set off a bomb to kill a couple ultras. And Rafferty is just continually messing with this guy's head. And he thinks this whole time, and it's even mentioned in this issue, he's like, I've had the upper hand this whole time. I am the guy that is pulling all the strings here. But of course, Alex Swan's willpower wins the day. He's the one who's able to fight through it. And Rafferty, after killing all these ultras, the one guy that kills him, which I hope Rafferty doesn't show up. We don't really see Rafferty die. We just assume that he does. But the one guy that gets him is not an ultra. Kind of like that. I like how that is. I think the comparison that I had for Rafferty as a villain was Simon from Die Hard 3. Where he's always messing with Bruce Willis and, oh my God, Samuel L. Jackson character. That's kind of the idea that's kind of the idea I had. You got a favorite panel?
I'll go with that 2-page spread. I think it's pages 2 and 3, where he's doing the dive through the candles with the double guns kind of etched over his wrist to make it even more special.
Yeah, dude, that is a sick couple pages right there. I mean, this strike team's coming in there. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 guys. 7 up here. And he's shooting off this way, so I'm sure there's other guys.
Yeah, those are the guys behind him.
Right. Rafferty's trying to make his way out of there. Yeah, dude, I agree. I think this is the one that, this one stands out. So I went the minimalist route. I went with page 14, and you talked about this one, this panel right here, where the explosion is happening, and it's just mainly an all-white panel, except for some specks coming off of where it's kind of blowing stuff off of his back, and he's trying to cradle and protect the baby. I thought that was a pretty sick panel. So overall thoughts on the saga itself. Before I get into that, though, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about on this issue?
I think it's it.
Okay. We talked about the continuity errors, so I'm not going to rehash that. That was one big thing I kind of had down here. It was the first time a book told me to stop reading in the middle.
Speaking of that, a lot of books back in the day, it would be like at the beginning of the issue, there would be a panel or a big blurb that says on the first page, wait, if you haven't read such and such yet, don't read any further. Read that first. They want you to be caught up, but it's different when it's in the middle of a comic. They're off. Just grab a bookmark and run and grab Freaks number 13 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm used to editor's notes like, oh, hey, this happened. It happened all the times in the comics. So check out this issue. Check out Prime number 20. Check out this. But never have I been directed to stop reading. That was pretty interesting. There was a moment in Warstrike number 6, and I'll point this out here. I don't know if you even paid attention, and it could have just been something because it's mentioned that it's Halloween in there. But Warstrike number 6, there is when you see Rafferty, he might be on the front cover and he's wearing a mask. So Rafferty's wearing a mask all of a sudden in Warstrike number 6. And he goes through, there's a mention in there where he's like, it's Halloween and I've got my mask on. I really don't know I thought that was an interesting choice. At the very end of the issue, when Warstrike is laying dead, I was a little confused because I thought the narration was Warstrike waking up, because there's a moment at the end where Rafferty has him down and hits him with a gun and knocks him out. This is after he's shot. As he's laying there in this sewer, Rafferty comes over and he's like, okay, blah, 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 it lights out. And he hits him with the butt of this gun. What happens shortly thereafter is it looks like Warstrike is waking up for some strange reason. Right here we go.
He's wearing a mask.
He goes, lights out. Warstrike's waking up. I get it now. He's actually not dead. No, he's wearing a freaking mask. So I don't know what they were shooting for with that. Maybe there's something I missed. I don't know, but
I don't know. Maybe it's just as a
symbolism.
Joke. Yeah, Rafferty threw the mask on. Who knows? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have no idea. But all right, so I put that down, and that was probably one of the things where I was like, that's an interesting choice to know what they were shooting for. I think that's it. As far as the story goes, I think James Robinson did an all right job. Aside from the continuity things we can complain about, I'm sure it's probably, just like you said, we've got Marvel coming in. This is going to be happening soon. I'm sure the teams at Malibu were possibly worried about their own jobs, their own titles that they had created, and wanting to get this story out. Number 2, a crossover. Granted, there's probably like maybe 4 issues here that this thing, the blood spatter, it was touching. So it's probably tough to keep some stuff straight, which I thought maybe this mask thing might actually be one of those deals where they're having a tough time. Like, oh, he doesn't have a mask? I didn't know that. Sorry.
We've already done the whole issue.
At the end, just have him put the mask on or strike. Put this panel in there about Halloween. That stuff's forgivable. Could this be a John Woo film? Could this be a nice cinematic film? The bones are there of stuff that I've already seen. It could easily transpose itself into something that you could see on the screen. It's action-packed. Noir is a great way to describe it because he's this hard-boiled detective that's always talking to himself. There's a couple moments, where him and his relationship with Ellen was a bit strange. He proposes to her over the phone. They have a discussion about their marriage the night of. After they get married, she's kind of questioning him, like, are you sure that you wanted to do this? I'm like, you should have got that conversation out of the way in the beginning before you guys went and got married in Vegas. Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought James Robinson told a tale here I was interested in. Action-packed. It's good to see, 2 non-powered individuals, a hero and a villain, go at it, and one shall stand, one shall fall. I had a good time.
Firearm is one of the highly regarded Ultraverse books. It's not necessarily one of my favorites. I do like it, but it's kind of similar to how I talk about DJ Chichester's stuff, in that it's just kind of hard to get into the flow of the writing sometimes, possibly because of how wordy it is, possibly because of the British slang, and you're kind of having to try and decipher what he means a lot of times. It just kind of makes for a stilted delivery of the story sometimes, but really interesting type of comic. I thought it was a cool angle to throw into this starting from scratch superhero universe, like they're throwing this guy in. You might think he's a Punisher type because he's called Firearm and he's got a gun, but he's a totally different type of character.
Real quick, did he have a special gun initially?
I believe the gun he started with was issued by the Lodge, which was the organization he worked for in England before he moved to the States. And I don't think there was necessarily it had a weird blade looking thing coming off the barrel, but I don't think it did anything super special. I can't swear to it, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, the gun gets blown up in like the issue where he's heading to try to find the freaks, because Rafferty jumps him and beats the crap out of him with like a baton, and then tells him, fire at will. So when he gets up, he grabs the gun and it explodes in his hand. Right. That's the last time you see it. He's just pistol packing, that's what he's doing from there on out. But all right, real quick, last thing, simple. 1 to 10, Rafferty as a villain. We got to end it with a discussion, or at least your thoughts on Rafferty. So you can give me a 1 to 10 on Rafferty as a villain.
I will give him like an 8 as far as effectiveness and accomplishments, given the body count and how much trouble he gave Alex Swan. And, he was able to keep all the other Ultras out while he had that plan to get to the baby and everything. I would probably give him like a 4 or 5 on how much I like the character. I just find he doesn't look very cool. I don't like his hey, hi, howdy thing, and a lot of his, he's supposed to be the opposite of Alec.
Right.
So I thought, give him a Southern accent or make him even more different. The character's design and the way he talked doesn't appeal to me much, but you can't argue with the results. He did it. So I'll say 8 on that and 5 on my own personal like of him. We'll give him a 6 overall.
Okay. That's fair. All right. So originality, I think I'll go with, that'll be one thing that I'll judge him on. And I'll give him a, mid-90s. You got to think about what else is happening in comics for villains and stuff like that. I'll give him a 4 there. I mean, all he does, he's just an evil guy. He kills his parents. He's like, oh, I love killing. I'm going to go into the military. I'll kill some more. Then he gets beat up by an Ultra, and that's what sets him out on killing Ultras, because he got his ass handed to him. But he killed the Ultra, or at least a Ultra, because I think it was a team. And he was like, all Ultras got to die. So I'm going to give him a 4 as far as like origin and originality. The effectiveness, yeah, dude, I agree with you 100%. He was able to get the job done on quite a few Ultras. The Warstrike issue, he's leaving a trail of dead Ultras for Warstrike to follow. Right. So he's killing these guys left and right. I'll give it an 8, just like you said. As far as a foil to Alec, I know you said you would rather have seen him have kind of like this polar opposite of him. From the South, we got an accent and all this other stuff. But the way that he messed with Alec throughout this whole saga, I'll give that a 9. Like, his way of toying with him was pretty ingenious, in my opinion. I mean, he's just like, okay, hey, I want to kill this guy. I want to send you a cell phone so I can call you and tell you I'm going to kill this guy, and this is where I'm going to be. I mean, he was just over the top. Now, maybe I shouldn't go as far as 9, because that Simple Simon stuff from Die Hard 3, Die Hard 3 came out in what, 93?
No, 95, so this would have been before that.
No. Wow. That's interesting. They would have been...
I think it started as a script called Simon Says, and it was not a Die Hard movie. It got adapted into the Die Hard script. So, it's...
That's why I love having you here, Chris Armstrong.
It's conceivable that Robinson read that Simon Says script before,
I think you are onto something there. Scripts are out there. There's a possibility somebody could have got a hold of something and was like, okay. But anyway, I really enjoyed how he messed. I think that was the big thing that stood out to me. It's like, hey, just because I can toy with you, I'm going to toy with you. I'm going to kill these people. Just try and stop me. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to have you kill some people for me. That was the one thing where I was like, oh, crap. That's pretty devilish.
One last thing. I think all of the covers for the Rafferty Saga are by Howard Chaykin. I know this issue 18 is... and I know a couple of the others at least are. I was actually looking up to see if Howard Chaykin designed the character, because I thought maybe that's why he was doing the covers. I couldn't find that to confirm.
I was going to say, best of luck. The fandom for Ultraverse is kind of sparse every once in a while.
Actually, I'm on the Villains Wiki. It doesn't have anything about that, but it does say some stuff here. Alias Rafferty, origin, occupation, serial killer, hitman, powers and skills, marksmanship, weaponry, goals. This is what cracked me up. Goals: kill as many Ultras as possible. Kill Firearm. In parentheses, both failed. So, rubbing it in.
Our fandom, so we do have a fandom for Rafferty here. Marvel fandom. This just has James Robinson creating Rafferty, I guess. So there you go. Apparently appeared in Ultraverse premiere he was in Firearm number 6. First mentioned. First identified in Firearm number 12. Ultraverse premiere number 5, July of 94. First mentioned in March of 94 in Firearm number 6. What's going on in Ultraverse premiere?
Well, it might... See, Ultraverse premiere, I believe, was like the flip book, where it would be on the back of a different title every month. So it was probably on the other side of Firearm number 12.
Gotcha.
So those are kind of considered the same comic.
Okay.
I assume is going on.
All right. Issue 16, that's Howard Chaykin right there, right?
For sure.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right then. Because, going back through 15...
no, that's not. No.
Not.
But Rafferty's not on that cover, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Oh, that's true. Good point. All right, man. We've done it. It is time to get into plugs, brother. What do you got going on over there?
We got 2 movie podcasts I do with my buddy AJ. One is Small Screeners. The other is Because Movies. They've both been on hiatus pretty much this whole year. We're actually going to get back into it probably in the summer and bring those both back. Small Screeners looks at direct-to-video and made-for-TV movies. Because Movies is more all-encompassing. We just talk about whatever movies we want. For comic fans, specifically on Small Screeners, we've done episodes on Batman Under the Red Hood, Justice League New Frontier, the DC animated movies, as well as The Punisher from 1989. Jesse's been on a few episodes as well.
Oh, definitely. All right. Well, as for myself, let me do this before I forget. The Source Material Comics podcast is going to be taking part in the upcoming JS April. This is the first time that we are going to be a part of that. This was brought to us. Chris Bailey had introduced us to a guy by the name of the Irredeemable Shag, who has acquired many of us from the Superblog team to participate in JS April. So I chose All-Star Squadron number 19 and 20. This is a return of the JSA. It's a fun book. I'm not a big Justice Society guy, but I've dabbled. It was fun to do this. Me and Chris Bailey got together and talked about the issues. That should be airing in April. Obviously, JS April, hashtag JS April. Check that out. Big event going on all month long, and there are a lot of people participating. Over 30 bloggers and podcasters are in this thing, so it's massive. As for myself, the Source Material Comics Podcast, you can check that out. You check out the YouTube, folks. There's a lot of good stuff over there on the YouTube. You should be able to find any podcast that we have here, which is, of course, Unspoken Issues, the 1990s-centric comic book podcast, Source Material, which is the podcast that focuses on just about every era of comic books, and then, of course, Snap Material with myself and Evan Bevins, where we discuss the mobile Marvel card game Marvel Snap. So if you want to check that out, we have a good time talking over there. The dog likes it. I like it. We're good. That over there is Chris Armstrong. I'm Jesse Starcher. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's been the Rafferty Saga. We'll talk to you soon. Watch for more Marvel Malibu goodness possibly happening later this year. So 30-year anniversary of this stuff happening. It's a happening. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Back in 1940, 8 sensational heroes united to create the world's very first superhero team, the Justice Society of America. Now, 85 years later, we're gathering podcasters and bloggers from around the globe for a month-long celebration in an event we're calling JS April. Throughout April 2025, join dozens of content creators as they each share their own unique tributes to the original and greatest superhero team, including all-star podcasters and bloggers like
Justice Society presents
the Longbox Crusade podcast,
Campus Comics Cast,
Supergirl Comic Box Commentary,
the Quarter Bin podcast,
the Bat Pod,
the Earth 2 podcast,
FW Team Up,
Diana Prince is the new Wonder Woman,
Fanholes podcast,
Back to the Bins,
Coffee and Comics,
the Huntress podcast,
*51.blogspot.com,
Justice Society Origins, a part of John Reed's Comics,
DC Specialcast,
Between the Pages blog,
The Outcasters, a Batman and the Outsiders podcast,
A World on Fire, an All-Star Squadron podcast,
JLA Stories and Friends,
The Monitor Tapes,
a Crisis on Infinite Earths podcast,
Lords of Order, a DC's Dr. Fate fan podcast,
David M. Gallagher at Medium.com,
JSA in the 90s,
Justice League Legacies,
DC Secret Files podcast,
Mike's Geek World,
Pop Culture Affidavit, the Source Material Comics podcast,
That Giffen Show,
Worst Collection Ever,
The Fantastic Four,
It All Comes Back to Superman.
And that's just some of the podcasters and bloggers who'll be joining in the celebration. Get ready for a thrilling month of beloved characters, fascinating insights, and incredible stories. Follow the action on social media with the hashtag JSApril, and visit our website for a complete list of participating podcasters, bloggers, and what they're each covering at fireandwaterpodcast.com/JSApril.